Today, we're going to be talking about proximity being a privilege. So, proximity being a privilege, have you ever felt like you just didn't belong and you were doing things out of character in order to feel like you could fit in, but you still never truly felt like you really fit in anywhere? That's what today's topic is. If you have gotten the book, Building the New, A Year of Living Life on Purpose, you can get your copy on Amazon. And we're going to be talking just about that. So on page 35, it says, have you ever felt like you just didn't belong? I've learned that until you belong to yourself, no place will ever feel like home. You can't experience genuine connection and intimacy unless you're truly at home with yourself. The most satisfying form of belonging starts within the belonging to yourself, because belonging can't exist with others if you don't feel or believe that you belong to yourself. And I just want to take a moment to ask, like, have you ever felt like that? Have you ever just didn't want to be alone, but there are moments in time where you acted out of character, you compromised integrity, you've done things out of your values in order to fit in? This is what I'm talking about. So when you negotiate who you are and what you want, you lose your authenticity, the essence of what makes you you. You start attracting people, places, and circumstances that leave you feeling unsettled, insecure, and disconnected. While trying to fit into places you have no business fitting into, you lose sight of your greatness. The breakthrough happens when you give yourself the freedom to be who you wholeheartedly want to be. You have to have, do, and be what you desire from your heart versus your mind. When this is the pace from which you act, you create space for what is good and right for you in this season of your life. Only from this place can you start to attract people, places, and opportunities that align with with who you want to be and how you want to show up. Belonging refers to a sense of connection, acceptance, and identity within a group, community, or social circle. It involves feeling like you're a part of something bigger than yourself, where your thoughts, feelings, and experiences are valued and understood. When you feel internally supported, everything shifts. You start to feel protected and secure. And from that space, you feel worthy, capable, and like anything is possible for your life. When you compromise your standards and values, you compromise yourself. And so I just want to pause here before I get into the next one, which is an authenticity. I had a client the other day, before, like, in a consultation, because I do strategy calls. If this is something that you're wanting and you are looking for a coach, a mentor, you can book a 25-minute strategy call at tanyacoliver.com/call. And for a while, the thing about as we change and shift is, back in the day, I used to hear this, like, when I was in my 20s, about people going through midlife crises. And what I realized, and what this book is about, it's about identity shifts and how to shift intentionally versus before things get out of control. Crises happen when you have no clear path of who you are and your identity is wrapped in things that are destructive. Um, and you're or like based on what you do, and you're not clear on really who you are, your self-worth, your value, outside of maybe a relationship or outside of your career. So I do see the crisis happen when people are operating from a space of identity built on a weak framework, on a weak foundation. But the identity shift that happens can also be built on purpose, which is really what the book is building the new, time and time again, whenever you want, whenever you change your mind. And with that, also, as you change, the relationships around you change. In chapter 3, I walk you through core values, establishing your core values, your standards, and then a level of expectation. As you grow, you're reintroducing yourself to the people that you love, the people that you're taking with you. Because if you don't introduce yourself, for example, in your marriages, your partnerships, your children, your business relationships, you can easily outgrow them. And the last thing you ever want to do is create that a disconnect between the people that you are intentionally working so hard to do any type of restoration or repair with. With that being said, when I was doing this consultation, the Lord has put on my heart a shift that I'll be announcing pretty soon, of the direction of how he's wanting me to shift the business model. And for those of you that have been with me for a while, have also seen the shifts happening. I get a lot of private messages, and so with me stating that is that there comes an introduction, right? There's going to be a launch of the podcast coming back up on a different purpose. And when I was having this conversation with this gentleman, before he started to move forward with coaching, he was just talking about nobody really understanding. And he's a high performer. He's built successful businesses. He's done very, very well. He's worked with many coaches, and nobody's been able to get or direct him into proper structure framework within his brain, his personality. And we have conversation and incorporating God into the process. So as we're having this conversation, he just felt this level of relief because of all the disappointments, all the dissatisfaction, all these promises that never hit the level of the expectation that was promised. And in the conversation, there was just a part of him that just knew that finally somebody came to be able that had the capacity to support the vision that is being called upon his life for that next level upgrade, for that identity shift, specifically in his business and in his relationships and ultimately in the life. And so the reason I say this is because when you step into a higher calling for yourself, that authenticity, that being true to where you're being guided to go, where you're being guided to grow into, who you're being guided to grow into, and the aspects of you that can no longer come with you. In fact, I wasn't going to read this, but I am going to read this to you. There's a part in scripture that talks about, let me come to it real fast. I think it's towards the end of the book, about focus forward on page 200. And it says in Genesis 19:7, the command is clear. Flee for your lives, don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in plain sight. When you constantly look back at past failures, old identities, regrets, or comfort zones, you paralyze your growth. You may want to evolve, but emotionally, you stay the same as you were. Transformation requires 100% commitment to the 10.0 version of your identity shift, which I teach you how to do in chapter 2. When you're becoming your next level self, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, there are parts of your old identity, habits, mindset, and environments that cannot come with you. If you choose to keep revisiting them, you risk turning your progress into something called divided focus. The consequences of looking back. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. And that's in Genesis 19:26. Lot's wife was physically leaving the city, but her heart was still in Sodom. She looked back, and in that moment, she became stuck, frozen in place, literally turned into a pillar of salt. Many interpret her looking back not as a casual glance, but as a longing for what she was leaving behind: her home, her lifestyle, and even the familiar sinful dysfunction of how she once operated in her environment. She was physically leaving the city, but emotionally still tied to it. That divided loyalty cost her everything. Such is the danger of divided focus, trying to move forward while emotionally clinging to what you promised to leave behind. The life you said you want and the person you want to become will manifest itself when your attention and energy are focused on who you desire to be, your new identity, not on a past memory of who you were by default. And when I'm saying this, is that when you're going through this space of even the belonging and authenticity is just the clarity on what you want. And let me get into that next part too for you, where it comes back to that self honesty. So in page 100 in building the new, Authenticity is being honest about what you want and who you want to be and having the courage to go after it. Once you have that clarity, the identity work becomes about integrating the habits, actions, mental rehearsal, and daily routines that align with your vision, something you'll learn how to do in the upcoming chapter in the high performance habits. When you take the time to be honest and intentional about what you truly want, you create the space to experience real, authentic relationships. And I'm getting a lot of people come to me about that. My friend circles have really shifted, and I've gone through seasons of like the ostrich phase where I've gone into spaces of consecration and spent time alone with the Lord to get clear on what I needed to resolve within myself and what needed to shift within me. And as I changed, the people in my circle started to change. I now have cultivated the most amazing friends. We're all running parallel on the same core values and standards, which I teach you in chapter 3. These are things that I've only recently developed and things that I've also work on with clients, and realize like people have core values and mission statements in businesses, but why is that the only area of life of where you're operating? There needs to be a standard in your relationships. There needs to be core values in relationships. There needs to be core values in marriages, so you can all run parallel together and be rooted in something sustainable. The reason why things create fragmentation and separation and divorces and divisions is because it's built based on feelings. And feelings are so unreliable. It's not to say to not like respect them and to hold space for them, but it's not sustainable. Just like motivation is not sustainable. That's required habits and discipline. There are disciplines in place that have built on some type of a foundational framework where you can build something sustainable, something you can hold, something you can expand upon. And in here, when you take the time to be honest and intentional about what you truly want, you create the space to experience real, authentic relationships. Accepting yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, means you may face moments of rejection from others, but that's part of the learning to belong to yourself first. You may feel misunderstood or even rejected by people who are familiar with your old identity. And people, they meet you in an identity that sometimes they'll never let go of. And they'll try to remind you of it over and over and over again. You're like, when I do podcasts and I'm interviewed or people are asking me questions, I say, well, I have many past lives in this lifetime, meaning like aspects of myself no longer exist, but I did live that in that memory. And I reintroduce the memory when I know that it's something that's going to help somebody, give them faith, give them hope, get them on the other side, and to give that as a testimony for them to be inspired to start moving a little bit differently. And those are the best times of when we bring in the past, because other than that, as I just mentioned, we're talking about life, a Lot's wife in Genesis. There's no need to look back, only to move forward, because that's how we consistently are able to grow and evolve, versus getting caught up in that divided focus. There's reasons why people have fragmentation and split personalities or bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. Pieces of them, they had to create an alter personality at childhood because there was no safety. And that's a whole nother conversation we're not going to get into, right? AKA deliverance work, soul wound healing, inner healing, things like that. Going back, frozen moments of time, going back and taking back those versions of yourself that you've abandoned, others have abandoned, they've been abused, trauma, things like that. So when you take the accepting yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, means you may face moments of rejection from others, but that's part of learning how to belong to yourself first. You may feel misunderstood or even rejected by people who are familiar with your old identity, but that's part of the process. As you continue to grow, expand, and evolve, you shed old layers of an outdated identity. These layers have to be released in order to align yourself with God's purpose for your life. So this is in the book. I was kind of skipping around a little bit in here, but I want to read one last part to you. Settling is going through life making choices based on what you believe you're worthy of receiving versus making decisions based on what you wholeheartedly want. and you have to make a decision that stops here. So, hope you enjoyed a little bit of the pieces here. May 29th, I want to invite you, if this is something that is of interest to you, is a time management productivity building based on a on purpose identity that you're creating, and then reverse engineering the process in a 12-month just teaching you how to build a plug and play time management productivity course. It's going to be a 3-day workshop, about 8 hours worth of like solid content. We're going to be building it out together. That's why I've expanded it into a 3-hour workshop. This is going to be a group. If you want to schedule a call to see if this is a good fit for you, please feel free to do that. Just send me a message, or you can, I believe I put a link in here somewhere, tanyacoliver.com/productivity is the landing page for you. And if you have any questions, or if there's any topics you want covered on another video, I'd be super happy to do that. As well as a book club is coming up, where we're actually going to read into the book in June, because we have the time management the end of May 29th through the 31st. And if this is something where you just want to be stingy and you want me all to yourself and customize build out, you can schedule a call and we can absolutely do that. I do that with my CEOs, my executives, and sometimes they'll have me come in there and do company team trainings and kind of do like a build out for them as well. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.